Hi, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Rebecca. Can you hear me?
I can.
I ended up in McDonald's in Falls Church.
You know, we were just having that conversation earlier today. Sometimes that's the best place to find Wi-Fi.
I was just ignoring the 30-minute loitering sign.
Oh, there you go. You look mostly respectable. They should be okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna block my video here soon.
Well, I'm going to pause. I think we're recording. Let me see if I can pause that for a second.
Yeah. Again, I appreciate you doing this.
No problem.
Rebecca, we'll probably wait for a couple minutes after 7 to see a couple people hop on.
Yeah, absolutely. I just went ahead and set up the recording so when we get going, we don't miss anything.
Perfect.
And I'm just looking to see. And Tim, when we get going, I may mute you just so we're not picking up the background noise.
I will mute myself. Yeah, I was going to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't want to
all right. That's okay. But if I forget, please mute me.
Will do. I was looking to see if there's a way to group do it. There should be. That doesn't mean I can find it efficiently. All right. So while we're giving it a second for folks to join, if you all wouldn't mind just double checking and making sure the bit.ly link to the session links is working. And that is case sensitive. So I've also pasted it into the chat window up top. Hey there, how are you doing? All right. So you should be seeing on the screen just CodeVA's logo and then the bit.ly link. I created a Google Doc.
Did you say you put it in the chat, Rebecca? I don't see it in the chat.
Top, but if you let me repost that.
Okay, thanks.
Sometimes it's a little fussy. If you join afterwards, you can't always see the archive.
Right.
Hey, Karen, how are you doing? All right, there we go.
Nick said she clicked it and it wasn't working. I'm clicking it now.
Okay.
I got it. I've got a Google Doc coming up.
Okay. All right. I'm always a little paranoid about my sharing of these things. You know, you think you've got it working and then.
Okay, well, whoops. That's the bathroom sound. Don't worry, I'm going to mute here a little bit. I'm pretty close to the bathroom at McDonald's.
That's hilarious.
Hey, well, let's go ahead and get started. Some more people may hop on, but thank you all. Thank you all the ones that are currently on. Again, I apologize. I haven't gotten to my daughters in D.C. yet. I had to stop at Falls Church at McDonald's. But we do have Rebecca Dovi with us from CodeVA. You remember, y'all filled out that form, and one of the topics was definitely computer science standards that we're all required to implement next year. So I asked Rebecca from CodeVA to kind of talk to us about those standards a little bit, and also the resources that CodeVA has. So she is recording this, so we'll be able to send that out later on once I get that link from her. So with no further ado, Rebecca, I appreciate you being here for us, and I'll turn it over to you. I'll mute myself.
Absolutely. So I appreciate everybody being here. The link is on the front page of the slides, and you should be seeing that on your screen right now. And then on top of that, for some reason, the slides have disappeared for me, so I may have to troubleshoot that in just a second. But so, okay. All right, let me reopen that real quick. I'll try to talk and click at the same time. We'll see how I do. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today about the new computer science standards. And so, like I said at the beginning, there's a link on the first slide page. Here we go. that I went ahead and just set up a Google Doc with most of the links that I'll talk about today. And then, we can add anything if folks have specific questions and resources. I'll add that at the end. But basically, this is a pretty big shift for Virginia. We're the first country or the first state in the country to be implementing mandatory computer science standards. There are a lot of places around the country coming sort of right behind us. And so while Virginia leads the way, it also means that there are some challenges as we go forward. So tonight we'll be talking about very briefly the structure of the SOLs, so what the expectations are, and then we'll overview what training opportunities we have here in state to support you all as you're working to implement. At any time, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to just pop them into the chat window. I'm pretty good about switching back and forth, and I don't mind stopping if there's something we kind of need to go over at a particular moment. So just feel free to hop in at any point if there's something you need a little bit more coverage of. So just a real quick introduction. So my name is Rebecca Dovi. I'm the Director of Education for Code Virginia, and we're a statewide nonprofit, and our mission centers around bringing computer science education to all Virginia students. And so we do that through three primary ways. We do advocacy at the state level to make sure that the policies in place are conducive to teachers being able to teach this in their classes. We also, I'm here in our space in our downtown Richmond, so we also do direct student programs. But then the biggest chunk of what we do is centered around teacher training. So we've been doing teacher training since the summer of 2014. We've, I think, now worked with almost 3,000 teachers across the state, and we'll go over in a little bit some of the various programs and partnerships that we have to help support teachers and school divisions across the state. So the very first thing I wanted to start with is just a very brief introduction to the standards themselves. I know probably most of you do not spend late nights reading education standards. I hope you have more exciting things to do. And so, we find a lot of the folks we work with, they may have glanced at the standards, but it's easy to sort of miss a couple things in there. So the thing that you see on the screen right now, these are the 6 strands of computer science. So,
hey, Rebecca, I'm sorry, it's Tim. We only still see you. We don't see the slides.
Oh my gosh. Well, that does not help anybody. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Let's see. I was just saying to Tim, the coffee shop next door decided to have an open mic night tonight, even though I have very important computer science stuff to talk to you all about. So I've moved machines, and clearly that's disorienting. Okay.
Bingo.
Bingo. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. So any case, when we're looking at the standards, they're built around these 6 strands. And so nationally, if you look at any of the national documents, either from the Computer Science Teachers Association or ISTE or those kinds of organizations, you may notice there are 5 strands. In Virginia, when they were working on the standards, they did decide to make cybersecurity a separate strand. And that reflects basically the number of jobs that we have open in state. So a lot of the push around this, there's sort of 2 main reasons there is this large push around computer science. First of all, it's sort of easy to measure one, are jobs. Virginia has the highest concentration of jobs in computer science and in cybersecurity. A lot of folks are sort of surprised to know that. We tend to think about, Silicon Valley and New York City and places like that. But the fact is Virginia has an enormous amount of these jobs. Depending on the time of year that we pull data, there can be anywhere from 40 to 44,000 open computer science jobs and roughly 37 to 40,000 open cybersecurity jobs. So it's a huge economic loss. And frankly, in terms of cybersecurity, there's a lot of danger involved in us not being able to secure those systems. So that's sort of the practical side of things. The broader sense, though, is when we think about how we experience the world now, how we get our information, how we solve problems, all of those pieces, we now do that through a technological lens. So even though not every student will end up in a career where they're writing code and those types of things, there's some basic things that they need to understand about what this technology can and can't do, about its impact on their lives in terms of safety, privacy, things like that, that are of a larger importance than it was certainly when I was going through my K-12 experience. So there's sort of that double purpose to why the standards went in place. All right, so when we think about the standards, overall the structure is from kindergarten through 8th grade, those standards are meant to be integrated in with core instruction. The way the legislation reads is it's a core subject along with English, math, science, and social studies. So we'll talk a little bit about where those opportunities exist in just a second. And then there are also these optional paths that start in middle school and carry through high school in terms of being able to offer electives. So a lot of school divisions across the state already offer some things that are like computer science or are computer science at the high school level. Some offer some things at the middle school level. But as a part of the standards writing, they went ahead and defined some new electives to help support schools as they were developing out pathways. And so at the K-8 level, the purpose is really centered around sort of a broad understanding of the impacts of technology. And then by the time we transition through late middle school into high school, it's more focused on career readiness and those types of things for students that opted in. A little bit of myth busting. The two questions we get the most often are related to testing and graduation requirements. Those are the hot button issues. The good news is the answer to both of those is no. There is no new standardized test for computer science. It is in the state accreditation standards for schools, so it does show up there. We always are asked, like, how is this enforced? And, you know, the DOE really doesn't have a squad of ninjas that's going out and enforcing this, but it does show up in those accreditation standards. Again, we are okay with the fact that there are not standardized tests involved. You know, we didn't want to expand testing for students. Equally at the high school level, there's not a graduation requirement attached to this. So that there's been some misinformation around this. It's an option as to whether or not schools offer this. But again, it's also okay for a student to hit high school and decide to be a plumber and follow through, or a nurse, or, you know, myriad of other career choices. So the idea is through the integration through 8th grade, they have a deeper understanding of the opportunities through technology, and more students might decide to opt into those electives, but it's not attached to a specific graduation requirement. All right, so we're just going to go through real quick the levels just to give you a real brief overview. One thing that we hear a lot about at the elementary level are concerns about devices. We know that there's a lot of difference, even, you know, division to division, but then also school to school in terms of the number of devices that they have available to work with. And then also there's just sort of the cognitive level of students at different places along their elementary career. So the folks that wrote those elementary standards, they were all elementary teachers, which I think is incredibly important. So they really had an eye on what students need in order to be successful and the support teachers need as they were writing these standards. So when we look at the coding piece, basically coding doesn't officially start as I am at a computer independently coding. Hi, how are you doing? So that doesn't start until 3rd grade, right? So in kindergarten and 1st grade, the phrasing is either independently or collaboratively, and it also has in there, could it be on the computer or what's called unplugged. So for an example, a teacher might do a whole group activity where students are following a set of directions. That's an example in kindergarten and 1st grade of a very appropriate way to be approaching the algorithm, or, you know, just following step-by-step instructions, part of the standards. By 2nd grade, the language shifts that they are both independent and collaborative. And again, it has that unplugged or on a computer. And then by 3rd grade, it's both independently and collaboratively on a computer. Okay, so if that helps a little bit in sort of understanding the on-ramp, and again, that reflects both how students are learning during that phase of their academic career, and also just a reflection of the number of devices schools may have available. So, you know, one of the other big questions we get is, you know, kindergartners are going to have to be coding, and it's like, kindergartners can code. They're perfectly capable of doing it, but it's up to the school and division to decide how and where they're going to implement that. All right, by the time we get to the middle school integrated standards, there are basically themes per year. So in 6th grade, a lot of the standards are themed around data. And part of the reason for this is the team that worked on the middle school standards was looking at the other core content areas across those grade levels and trying to sort of cluster computer science topics that matched the kinds of things students were doing at those grade levels. So in the 6th grade, there's a focus on data. The 7th grade, there's a little bit more of a focus on the internet. And by 8th grade, they're focusing a little bit more on cybersecurity. One other thing I should have pointed out earlier, that from kindergarten through 8th grade, the primary focus of cybersecurity, it's not a professional cybersecurity. We're not worrying about hackers. It's more about individual safety online. So where schools are already doing things around cyberbullying, that definitely supports the computer science SOLs. Things like, what is my personally identifiable information? Why do I need to use a strong password? Those types of things. And then in 8th grade through high school, they start to shift towards more of that career focus. And again, the other thing that we see with the middle school integrated standards is a building of career awareness. Again, there's that big focus at the state level on job readiness and job awareness at the middle school level. And so the decision was to really try to sort of blend that in with these computer science standards. And with the huge number of open jobs that we have across the state, it's important that students know that these opportunities exist. And, you know, we've seen a big shift. I know when I was teaching high school computer science 15 years ago, my students really did need a 4-year degree from, you know, a ODU or Virginia Tech or something like that in order to be successful. Now the opportunities have really spread out. Those opportunities are not just in sort of the Virginia Beach, Richmond, Northern Virginia corridor. We're seeing a lot of those jobs actually moving out to more rural localities, and they're entree points that are not just a 4-year degree. So students with the right preparation out of high school can sometimes enter into the field. So there's been a lot of shift, and that's why we see that career readiness piece. From here, we shift off. So the other thing you may notice at the middle school level is there's a real focus for the coding standards on this idea of modeling and simulation. And this is a reflection of what starts to happen in science classes through middle school. So in the 6th grade, they're expected to use an existing computing model. 7th grade, they're refining, making adjustments to an existing model. And by 8th grade, they're creating new models. And all of these are to run simulations of scientific facts and phenomena. And so we'll talk in a little bit. We do offer some specific training that are just focused on this computer science and science piece. And then the last piece are the electives. This is kind of the fun part. So again, there's not a mandate that anybody has to offer these, but the state wanted to really create some standardization so that as divisions and schools were building their pathways, that they had a little bit more guidance. So the first thing, middle school elective, is really a choose your own adventure. And this is a reflection of the fact that different middle schools across the state do electives very differently. Some do 6-week rotations, some do year-long courses. And so a lot of thought and attention was paid to designing this course. So basically you'll see there's a 6-week version, a 9-week, an 18-week, and a 36-week. So the idea is the 6-week version is the core, and there's a focus on coding. And you can either do that in a drag and drop block-based language like you would see in Scratch or in the code.org code studio things, or you can use a text-based language like a Python or something else. The 9-week gets a little bit more in depth into the impacts of computing. So how is computing and how is computer science changing the world around us? And then the 18 and 36-week versions go ahead and cover all of the strands. So students get a more broad coverage of all of that. Let me check. All right, I just wanna, okay, I'm just checking the chat room, make sure I'm not missing anything. So that's the middle school election, and there's a lot of flexibility. We have some divisions that are offering like a 6-week core for 7th grade, and then they're designing either a semester or year-long class at the 8th grade. You can really use this in a lot of different ways. There is a course number assigned to this, and if that's something you need, you can either email our email. It's a little hard to find on the DOE website. So if you're looking for that, just let us know and we'll help you track it down. I may have a link to it in the notes. If I don't, I'll add that. Now the high school electives, basically there are a lot of different electives that are already on the books for high school. We have advanced placement courses. So there are 2 advanced placement courses for computer science. In places that are very heavy in career and technical ed, there's the programming course, advanced programming, IT Fundamentals is another course that actually covers a fair amount of computer science. But the decision was to also create 3 brand new electives. These also have course codes. And so just the titles are here. So there's foundations, there's principles, and then there's programming. And so these are all meant to be, again, high school level courses, not to the level of advanced placement, but several of them could be used as like a prerequisite. So if you see the computer science principles, that course is designed to be a really strong prerequisite if your school wants to offer AP computer science principles. If you're in a situation where you have IB and the CS principles also map together very well, that computer science foundations is really meant to be an intro level course. We do trainings for that. There's a free curriculum that is available to anybody that's looking to implement. And really the idea there is it's a broad-based introduction that gives a little bit of a taste of the different fields in computer science, and it can help students select into more specific electives. So it's possible a student goes through and says, you know, I really didn't like that coding stuff, but the networking piece was interesting. I'm going to go and pursue some Cisco networking courses, something like that. And then that computer science programming course is a really good prerequisite for schools that offer the AP Computer Science A in Java or looking to create different pathways. So if you ever have any questions or need some support in figuring out pathways, because it is kind of like trying to untangle spaghetti between what existed already and what's been created, don't hesitate to reach out. That's actually the majority of my time right now is working with divisions around sort of some of this planning. And we've got a couple divisions that are a little bit farther ahead in terms of mapping these pathways. So we have some good examples from some urban schools, some rural schools, some suburban schools in terms of how they're building this. So sometimes it helps to just see what another division is doing, and we can make those connections too. All right, so any questions before we move on from structures of the SOLs?
Hey, this is me back up to the table. Hey, when it comes down to CTE programs, in other words, there are certain courses that could be used to satisfy CTE requirements, et cetera. So, are you all working with the DOE to get some of those like middle school ones approved? Because there are some, of course, at the middle school area that are CTE courses. I think, obviously, most of the ones at high school, I think, already fit that. So I guess I'm just, are you working with the DOE to make sure that CTE and all this stuff kind of works together?
Yes, and that's sort of the next step, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of effort after the legislation passed to really just, first of all, create the standards. And then my understanding is, and again, I don't work at the DOE, so this is just my understanding of how things are working. Basically, the folks that work with CTE and then through the CTE Resource Center in Verso, they didn't want to make substantial changes until after the standards had been written because they need an update. But they want to make sure they're updating based on sort of the other core set of SOLs. And so it's kind of odd across the state. It really depends division to division where computer science sits for different localities. So in some places, CTE, I think most of the divisions across the state, CTE tends to be where it sits, but we also still have divisions that have it in the math department. But the short answer is yes, we are working with DOE on those pieces. And my understanding is there will be some revisions. For example, the AP Computer Science Principles course around this time last spring was added into the CTE Resource Center Verso listing of courses. So there's both a state level course code and a Verso course, depending on where that class sits for you all. And I think it's one of the pieces we're really hoping they get worked out sooner rather than later, because it has a lot of consequences in terms of licensure of the teacher that's working on them. So that we understand that that's a challenge. So, and again, that's something we do also help sometimes with. So if you're running into an issue with those kinds of things, we can help you troubleshoot it. And it's something that's usually better done one-on-one because it's so different from division to division. All right. So thinking about where do we start, right? This is, from our understanding, this is the first time that a completely new track has been added to public education, probably since PE was added back in the last century. So it's a pretty big lift, right? To all of a sudden add a new subject area that teachers may not be familiar with, and that also has this aspect of being very rapidly changing. And so for us organizationally, the thing that we really feel like is the most important thing that schools and divisions can do is really invest in their staff. And, I think computer science sort of sounds scary. It's combining two things that people get nervous about, computers and science, and then we shove it together. But I think, just collectively taking a deep breath, it is all okay. There's nothing here that is impossible for schools and teachers to do. You don't need to hire somebody with a computer science degree. From all of the trainings we've done, teaching is much, much harder than computer science. You have excellent teachers in your building, and with the right support, they can really grow and shine with this new material. So the next thing we're going to do is go quickly through sort of our training programs and talk a little bit about how those are structured. We'll also talk about some of the projects we're working on going forward to support those training projects. And again, don't hesitate to stop as we're going and ask me questions. But again, so just that first piece is really trying to get your staff supported to make sure that they have that sort of knowledge and understanding. One thing I should have mentioned when I was covering the K-8 integrated SOLs, the one thing that the team really made a huge point about is the coding piece. They really felt like was the part that was the most new for most teachers. Very few teachers have spent a significant amount of time doing any coding. And so when they were designing the SOLs, basically they decided, okay, that's going to be stressful and tricky for folks when they're first getting started. It sounds kind of scary. So outside of that programming and analysis strand, all of the other 5 strands, everything that made it through that process of writing the SOLs has a hook into core content area. So what I mean by that is most of those other SOLs you can teach either by, you're already doing it, right? So when we talk about patterns and repetition in math in kindergarten, first and second grade, well, that happens to be the same thing as a loop in computer science. There are a lot of things where you're already covering this in your divisions and schools. Cyberbullying, that's part of the family life standards. It's reflected here in our computer science standards also. The other piece is it may just make a tiny shift to a lesson or a little bit of vocabulary added to really add that computer science in. So it's not as heavy of a lift as it can sometimes feel like. And when you think about it that way, it's anywhere from 2 to 5 things that fall into that coding category per grade level. It's not a major shift. Okay, so CodeVA offers 7 programs from elementary all the way through high school. We run our programs in hubs across the state. We'll talk about where those are in just a second. But we've really made an investment and done a lot of fundraising around trying to make sure that we have these regional hubs so that we're not leaving any divisions out across the state. So just to quickly go through our programs, at the elementary level, we have a Coaches Academy. And the purpose of both of our Coaches Academies are to train school personnel to go back and run PD and support teachers as they're working to implement. And then we also run one-day sessions that are called Launching Computer Science that are more focused on the classroom teacher. At the middle school, we are launching this summer. We're piloting our CS Coaches Academy. So that's a brand new project for us. We also offer Project Guts, which, as I mentioned earlier, is that focus of computer science and science. And then we also have training on the elective middle school course through CS Discoveries. And then currently we offer 2 high school programs. There's that first intro elective, the Computer Science Foundations. And then we also have the AP level APCS principles. We are working with the DOE, and we do hope to start expanding some of those high school offerings. This summer, we're really focused mostly because the mandate is going into effect next school year. So our main focus is making sure we're building as much capacity at the K-8 level. And sort of after that bubble passes, then we're going to go back and add some more at the high school level to really make sure that as divisions are growing programs, they have those supports all the way across. All right, so I was just going to go through sort of one by one what the different programs are and a little bit of how they're structured. And again, ask questions as we go. So we have 2 Coaches Academy. We have the elementary school, which has run for 2 summers, and then the middle school, which will be new this coming summer. Natalie is our primary developer on what that content will be. Her great experience in Shenandoah is really leading the way. She's done some great work with you all, and we're very lucky to be learning from her. And the purpose of this, again, is it's a classroom teacher, media specialist, ITRT, whoever it is the district or school identifies. Exactly. Yay, Natalie, she's the best. But but it's somebody who's in a position to support the folks around them. It can be very different from division to division. Last summer, we had 261 teachers from across the state participate in these academies. The average right now, we just did a data poll back in October, and right now the average is that each of those folks have worked with, by October, 35 teachers in their building. And really, when we kind of did the needs analysis across the state, there was just not a way to offer large-scale training in a year for every elementary school teacher across the state. And so the other piece is going to a one-day session isn't quite enough to really get you what you need. You know, you get all excited, and then school year gets going, and you're in November, and you're kind of scratching your head about what to do. So we figured having somebody in the building that could really support you was really, really important. So the goals of these programs are to develop a knowledge of the new computer science standards. And it's one of our expectations of the coaches, is that if they're sitting down with a kindergarten teacher or a fifth grade teacher, they can really give real-time advice and support. We do coding in the Scratch programming language, so they'll become proficient in Scratch. They're also really working on an understanding of how to design and teach integrated lessons. Because of the way our standards have worked for a long time, we find a lot of instruction is still very, very siloed. And so this idea of integrating can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming when teachers first start working with it. In support of this, we're actually working right now on an integrated lesson planning guide. So it's sort of your traditional lesson planning cycle, but with some more information and specifics around both integration and the computer science piece of how do you accomplish that and still meet your regular curricular goals. Let's see, they also walk away with an ability to plan and implement computer science professional development. That can be after school activities, that might be presentations at a faculty meeting. It could be, you know, a lot of our coaches came back the first year and like, hey, I went to this training and now my division wants me to run a 3-day session. So they also get a curriculum for professional learning. That was one of the biggest ahas that we sort of had. We piloted with our first team of 18 teachers, is they really came back and they're like, well, now that I've been to the training, my district wants me to develop this whole day thing and I don't know where to start. So they also, again, they get resources and tools that they can use to actually go back and design integrated professional learning for their faculty. Those are designed around what we call bits, nibbles, and bites. So it's some small pieces that could fit into a faculty meeting or a warm-up. So about 15, 20 minutes. They've got some chunks that are like planning period length and then some that are about an hour, and then they can reconfigure those for whatever their school community needs. So that team has really given some good feedback on that this last year. It's really supported them as they're working with folks. And then the last piece, of course, is an awareness of resources and tools available to support implementation. Our focus really is on free tools and resources. We understand that there are vendors out there, and if your school or division is in a position to work with those vendors, that's fantastic. But the majority of schools across the state don't have, you know, I don't think anybody has hundreds of thousands of dollars laying around just with nothing to do. So, you know, that's part of why we say the most important thing you can do is invest in your teachers, give them the time to really learn the material, and then they can help guide with making, you know, purchases and things like that if that's where you need to go. But you can also implement without a huge investment in technology. The standards were very careful, especially at the elementary level when they were written. All right, so the way the academies are structured, it's actually a pretty large amount of time. It's somewhere between 90 and 120 hours, depending on how long the online portion takes folks. So there are online materials that they'll be working with throughout the year. There's a 4-day in-person session in July, so those are happening around the state. We do online sessions from November through February, and those are offered weekly with very specific subjects. We've really found that that helps teachers get sort of just-in-time support where they can ask questions and troubleshoot if needed. And then we do an in-person Saturday session in October and March. And a lot of that is centered on, you know, what are you experiencing now that the school year started? You know, how can we share resources? And then it's also doing a deep dive, kind of a computer science 101 on the standards. And so that they can really start to learn like the data and evaluation strand. What does it actually mean? What does cybersecurity really mean at the 4th grade level? Those kinds of things. All right, any questions on those 2 academies? All right. So the other piece that we offer at the elementary level is a one-day session called Launching CS. This is an overview, and it's meant more for classroom teachers, so it's more focused on student-oriented tools. So we go through some of the code.org resources that are out there. We cover Scratch, some of the Google CS First, just some of the free things that use easy to start working with and implementing with and thinking about. And then it also covers the standards and also some of the information about that integrated lesson planning. So the goal there is for teachers to walk away with a very practical idea of things that they can do in their classroom this coming year to start really building their capacity. One of the things our team has been talking about is starting to offer more specialized things. So I think as we get going across the state, we'll start to offer versions of this that maybe would focus on like formative and summative assessment, or more specifically around language arts, just different granular areas. But at this point, we're trying to just build sort of a broad understanding and availability of tools, things like that. All right, so transitioning to middle school. Just checking the chat window real quick. Good. I'm glad that they found that helpful. We've done a lot of those programs, and even though this feels a little scary, I should also add, somewhere in your division or your region, you have folks that are already doing this. They sought this out on their own. They really thought it was important and valuable. And I think that's one of the most important things, is starting to realize like where it's already happening and learn from the folks that are doing this. This doesn't have to be this huge new scary thing. There are a lot of tools and resources, and leaning on our community around us really, I think, can make this work very well for students. So at the middle school level, one of the programs that we've run this program since 2015. It's Project GUT, CS and Science. It's a fantastic program. It's run out of MIT, and it's really meant to incorporate computer science into any middle school science class. So they spend time on coding, and then again, that integrated piece. This is a major point of emphasis for the new computer science SOLs. That coding piece for the integration really aligns with those science standards. And the teachers in that session get a lot of time to do lesson planning and sort of brainstorming about where can they fit this in. So, oops, I have a typo. I apologize. This should be a 2-day session with some follow-up throughout the year. I know that team is also looking at possibly offering online, just with the weather between hurricanes and snow this last year. That was kind of a hassle. And so that facilitation team is looking at how they can adapt that to better suit people's needs. All right. And then for the middle school, the final project that we have is what's called Computer Science Discoveries. This maps to the new Virginia Middle School elective, and this is in partnership with Code.org. So we are Code.org's regional partner in Virginia. Virginia is actually their oldest partner. We have the same birthday as they do. We both started in 2014, or actually 2013, excuse me. And so when they first started running programs, they were running programs in like Chicago and Los Angeles, and that same year they called us up and it's like, hey, we're going to run out of big cities. Do you all want to see if you can work with divisions? We're like, sure, we'll try it. And so we've been partnered with them ever since. So this is a program, again, focused on the middle school age students. It's very hands-on, which I think is great for that middle school age. So they get to build their own website. They're doing coding to build apps. They're working on games. And then there's also a lot of physical computing devices. So you can do things like digital electronics, wearable electronics. We have some of the folks that have gone through that program that include robotics. There's a lot of different ways to customize it to your local community. And we have a really good team of facilitators working with that. So that's the training that, again, it maps to that Computer Science Discoveries. Some of the training there also allows them time to sort of figure out their local planning. So, for example, if your division is running an 18-week course instead of a full year course, those facilitators can actually help your teachers go through the curriculum and make some decisions about what to include, how to make sure they're covering everything, and giving students enough time to really become proficient. All right, so now we're transitioning on to our 2 high school programs. The first is the Computer Science Foundations. This is based on a national program called Exploring Computer Science. And the curriculum, completely free. It's a nationally recognized program that's been running for over 12 years. We've done now 10 cohorts of this particular program. We have a really highly skilled team of facilitators. And this is a much deeper dive. And the CS Discoveries is also to run an elective where that's the only thing you're really teaching. There's a lot more content the teachers need to know. And so it runs 5 days in the summer, and then they have follow-up sessions throughout the year, some online sessions. They also have the opportunity to get support either from our staff or our trainers or facilitators, if they run into something where they're struggling, those kinds of things. So in terms of this particular course, again, it's meant to be that like 9th grade, 10th grade introduction. So for a student who's not quite sure where they want to specialize, but knows they're kind of into technology, that kind of thing, they're trying to figure out their exact place, this is a really good course to have as that first keystone. So in terms of what it maps to, we've had some teachers use the curriculum in their computer math course. The majority of the teachers we see across the state, they implement in IT fundamentals, that Verso 6670. We also see folks using it in programming, and that brand new course, the Computer Science Foundations, it maps to that really well. And again, our facilitators can help make adjustments. We know that if it's in a CTE program, there's probably credentialing attached. And so again, those facilitators, they're all high school teachers. And so they're very, very good at helping teachers sort of troubleshoot those kinds of issues as they go along. And again, the curriculum is free online. Teachers can download it, look through it, get familiar with it ahead of time. And it's got basically day-by-day lesson plans for them to work with as they're building their own knowledge. Again, we've done 10 cohorts of this now. We have a lot of teachers who've been through it, and it's a really, really strong training program in terms of really building that high school pathway. And then the final high school course we offer right now is AP Computer Science Principles. Just like the CS Discoveries, this is a Code.org program. We're partnered with them. It is College Board endorsed. And so both the curriculum and the training program have the official endorsement of the College Board. Our team is, I think we have 4 facilitators in that program right now, incredibly strong. 2 of them have been readers for College Board, have actually gone and graded AP tests for them. 2 of our facilitators have PhDs in education. They work at the high school level, but they actually have PhDs. And, it's really been exciting to see this new AP course really grow across the state. Our cohort last year represents 25% of the AP CSP exams that happened here in Virginia. And so it's been really exciting. This course, I think it's going into its 3rd year testing now. So it's very, very new. But we really see this as a way of opening up opportunities. APCS Principles is meant to be a college-level computer science 101 course. So it's meant to be that intro level, just like you take AP Art History or AP Psychology or AP Bio. It's meant to be that college-level intro course. And so there's a huge amount of curriculum for the course. And then this particular program, it also helps teachers go through the AP audit process, define their syllabus, and really helps them prep for the assessments at the end of the year. This is a new kind of AP testing. The College Board is moving away a little bit from some of their more traditional kinds of testing. And so this one has performance tasks that the students complete throughout the year. And so there's a lot of emphasis. Teachers actually complete the performance tasks themselves and then grade each other's as a part of this training. So we've had really good results with that. And, I always like to brag on our training team. Our cohorts the last couple of years have actually beaten Code.org's national average in terms of scores. So they really put a lot of effort and work into making that a high quality program for teachers. So that summarizes the 7 programs. I know you probably can't read this very well, but this is a document that we have that maps sort of different needs and then maps them to our training programs. So if that would be helpful, we can certainly shoot that out to you. But it helps, if it's an elementary teacher who's going to teach computer science versus running training in their division, those kinds of things. And then also this lists the exact course numbers for high school, because that can be a little bit like alphabet soup to sometimes trying to figure out what's what. And again, as always, if that's something you need a little bit more specific help with, we can certainly support that. It is not on our website just because I finished it yesterday, but it will be, and I'll add a link to it in our notes document. Actually, I should make a note. I promised that, and sorry, if I don't write stuff, I'm at that point, my brain is full, so if I don't write it down, I will forget to do it. So I've got that noted to add to the notes document right at the end. All right, so again, the nice thing here is really trying to make sure that we list the correct course notes because they're a little hard to find on the VDOE website. All right, so in terms of training, this is one of the major investments we've put in over the last 2 years is making sure we have the infrastructure to run sessions around the state. So we try to stick to July just because with the King's Dominion law, it's a little funny in terms of who's out when. So we're starting the week of July 8th, and we have Danville in Northern Virginia. You'll also notice as we go through the list, we tried to pick locations that were far apart so that if, let's say, you're in Northern Virginia and you want to make a training and it conflicts, you have a couple, like you have the Harrisonburg and Richmond that are a little bit closer. So it's sort of trying to map out the state. So July 8th through 12th is Danville in Northern Virginia. And our website actually has which programs. We don't run all programs in every section of the state. For example, the AP course, we don't have as many people attend those sessions, so we're not offering 7 sections of that, we're offering 3. July 15th through 19th, we are only running a session in Harrisonburg, and we'll get to why in just a second, but the VDOE is running a computer science summit that week, and so this will be co-located with the summit, so we'll be right there. 22nd through 26th, we're in Southwest Virginia, way out by Bristol, it's Abington, and then also Richmond, Virginia. And then our final week will be Tidewater and Roanoke. So, you know, again, our goal is we've really been working with regional partners around the state to try to get locations so that teachers have an opportunity to get to training close by. You know, we know that it's one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we've gotten over the years. At the beginning, our funding really only allowed us to run things here in Richmond, and we knew that we were getting an enormous percent of our requests for training across the state, but a lot of divisions don't have money for teachers to travel to training. So we've really invested a lot of work in making sure that these are available regionally. And then the other piece is those Saturday sessions will also be held in all of these areas. We also frequently will reoffer like the Launching Computer Science program, and some of the other like one-day things will happen at those Saturday sessions too. Sometimes Computer Science Teachers Association runs meetings at these hubs. So the goal is not just to have a location where training is happening, but to really build a community to support computer science in that region. So we're working with a lot of regional partners across the state. Right now, JMU, ILR, the Southwest Higher Ed Center, CTE Resource Center here in Richmond, and we're still sort of ironing out some of our other regional partners, but it's been really exciting to learn a lot more about the state as we work with these folks. And again, this is posted on our website. I don't expect you to remember all that right off. So the last thing I was going to share today was just sort of FAQs, the questions we get asked the most often. And again, if you have any questions as I'm going, just feel free to pop them in the chat window and I'll get going. So number one, this is the very first question everybody asks is how much does training cost? And the answer is it doesn't. As long as you are from a Virginia public school and you meet the qualifications for the program, it's free. And that includes the materials, the resources, printed things, curriculum, all of that is free. You know, our goal is to make sure teachers have the supported resources that they need to be successful. And so we've worked very, very hard to secure funding to make sure that we can offer this across the state. Now, what I said in terms of qualifying to attend the training, for an example, it doesn't make sense for a 4th grade teacher to go to an AP course, right? And so we do kind of poke through when people register and double check and make sure that they're registered in the correct program. Sometimes people click the wrong thing, and so we'll follow up and make sure they're in the program that makes the most sense for where their students are. All right. Next question is travel cost. Unfortunately, our funding does not cover travel or hotel cost. So that is part of why we've gone to this hub model across the state to try to get as close as possible to where teachers are. I will say that for the high school electives, for classes in the CTE department, often divisions are able to use Perkins funding to help cover any travel costs that teachers may have. So, that may be something to work with your division a little bit with, those kinds of things. I wish we had an unlimited bucket of money, but we just don't. So we've worked to create the hubs to try to help out with that access issue. The other question we get asked all the time, and this is for all of our programs, do you need to know how to code? And the answer is no. While we do have folks that show up who have coded before, our expectation is that most people are showing up not ever having coded or not really proficient in coding. And so our facilitators are specifically trained in how to work with folks at different levels. So when we do sessions on coding, we usually, have practice exercises folks are doing, and we usually offer like a mild, a medium, and a spicy. So a beginner can work at the mild level, and then somebody who maybe has done a little bit more coding can challenge themselves at that spicy level, but they're all working on a similar topic, so that if you need to lean over to the person next to you and kind of poke and get a little bit of help, you're working on the same sort of thing. So that's from our programs from elementary all the way through high school. And we've had a lot of success with teaching folks how to code. Our facilitators have a lot of experience in this. And our approach is really focusing on generalizable skills. What are the nuggets in coding that are really going to inform students as they move and deepen in their computer science practice? All right. So who are trainers? We do get asked this. So our trainers are all Virginia public school teachers. That is the first sort of filter we look at when we're working on hiring people. They are experienced with using computer science as part of their daily instruction. So all the way from our elementary through our high school facilitators. They have been through the training programs themselves. They've been a huge part of helping design those programs. They represent urban, rural, suburban districts all across the state. And they really have a lot of knowledge both in the computer science, the standards, and also just that pedagogical support that teachers and students need. Many of them actually participated in the writing of the standards. They worked with the DOE on that, so they really do have a wide depth of knowledge. And again, they're regional across the state. So if you run into something that is very specific to your area of the state, if I don't know the answer, I'm very fortunate in having this team of people that work with us where I can usually say, oh, hey, let's talk to Shalita and she can help me troubleshoot that because she works in a district that's very similar, those kinds of things. Our expectation with our facilitators too is it's not just about wanting the training, but it's about building the community. So they are available to your teachers that go through training to answer questions via phone and email. They'll run webinars throughout the year on different topics. They're an incredibly dedicated team of folks that have been working with us now for the last few years. We're also always expanding. We know that in order to support the hub models, so we actually are going through applications for apprentices for our programs now. Apprentices, it takes a minimum of 9 months for them to become a full trainer. So it's a very slow, intentional process of how we onboard just to make sure it's a really good fit and they have the experience they need to really deliver high quality professional learning opportunities. And then sort of the last thing I had to share is the save the date. So the VDOE is organizing a statewide computer science summit to celebrate the new standards. It is July 18th. It is at James Madison University. Registration is not yet open, but hopefully it will be very soon. I've got a call on Tuesday with our liaison at the DOE, and it's one of the things on my list of kind of things to nag him about is see when that's going to open up, but it should be really interesting. We're pulling together a lot of division leadership and teachers that have really been working on this for the last several years to really tap into their expertise and get a view of just the different creative ways that folks are implementing the standards and troubleshooting and all of those pieces. So, all right. And that is that. So if you have any questions, you can always email at training@codevirginia.org. We have a couple people on staff that monitor that, so you can get a quick response. For those of you who joined a little bit later, that's the link to the document I created with the links for the session. And I appreciate you all having me in for the day. And as I've said throughout, if there's something that like a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, wait a minute, I really need to know about this one thing, or someone that you work with has a question, don't hesitate to reach out. That really is our mission, is to support schools and divisions as they're working to implement.
All right, Rebecca. Well, I want to thank you very much. This has been very informative. It's been great information. And again, you get that link to me. I'll share it out with the rest of the committee. Like I said, I know some people couldn't make it. They were very interested because, like I said, everyone's really involved and realize, this is here. So again, I learned some things and even talk with Nancy stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to some of the training opportunities and Coaches Academy and everything. I know we're planning on sending people up to one there in Harrisonburg in the middle of July. So
absolutely, thank you.
hey, well, great job. Anyone else have any final comments or questions or anything? So we got satisfied. Thank you, people in the chat. So again, Rebecca, thank you very much. And
thank you all. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you take care. And I think McDonald's is telling me I got to get out of here.
Oh, you ate your last fry. So safe travel.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Wow.